Our main topic for today is one that came from my muse, which is fail share. Okay, we're talking about failure today, my favorite subject. When we're talking about other people's failures, at least. So we're not going to start with me today. I'm gonna point us.
Feels good to hear about other people failing.
It does. There's something about knowing how other people just don't succeed that makes you feel better about yourself, and that's what I am here for today. I just think we should start with Tom. Let's start with the tallest, largest man in the room and tell us your failures.
Tell you my failures.
Yeah.
So we're focused on creative failures, just for context. You don't get to hear about all my other failures.
You can bring whatever failure
creative
you want.
failures.
There's lessons to be learned from all the failure.
Yeah, I mean, I have a number of things. I think my most consistent failure is just failing to see things through. Like throughout my life, I have dozens of things that I've started but not finished, and each of them feels sort of like a missed opportunity or a failure. Like currently, I would say my current failure is that I'm not making any time for my like personal non-Orange Nebula creative projects. I started several things while I was on my heart surgery leave. That I have worked on literally 0 minutes since I came back. But during the leave, I was working on it all the time, and I was like learning things about myself, and like really like they were good projects. But now it's just like nothing, and I need to make time for that stuff, and that feels sort of like an ongoing failure.
Yes.
Yeah. Whew.
You feel that
Might
too,
hit
Jared?
you right in the Jared.
And the Krista.
One thing that came to mind when I was trying to think of like concrete failures, I guess I had two things. One was there was this time when I was in high school where I got it in my head that like I wanted to paint something.
Okay.
Like, and I wanted to like just make something abstract, because I'd never really been a painter, but I had it in my head that like I was going to like get these paints and get in the garage, and I was going to like. It was going to be impossible to fail because all I was trying to do was express something. And so whatever I did, it was going to be an expression. It was going to feel like I brought something out of myself, and it was going to like serve its purpose.
Okay.
So I got all these paints, and I got in the garage, and I made this thing, and I did not have that experience. I did not feel like I'd expressed anything at all. I just
What did you paint?
failed to paint. It was just like, mixed media gestural stuff. Like it was literally just supposed to be like, like those paintings that you look at and you're like, a child could do that. That's squares.
Okay, I got it.
Like it was very much just an abstract thing. And I didn't have any sort of expressive experience, and so then it just felt like a failure, and I walked away from it. So I remember that one, and we could unpack these later, I guess.
Yeah. Have you ever tried it again?
No, and I think that was part of the failure was like not giving it a chance, not continuing to try and looking for something, because there's other things at play. Like I felt like it's not good, and but I think more than that, I also sort of learned that like not every media is going to be your zone for expression, and I was able to find that expression in other places, and but I do wish that I kind of stuck with it and tried a little more. And then the only other like actual thing that I thought of was there was a game that Mark and I were working on between Unsettled and Spiritfire that we put a lot of time into, and it was going to be the next game, and we ended up walking away from it, and like we have, it doesn't necessarily feel like that was a failure. Like we will take it back up at some point, and something will come from its ashes down the line. But like at the time, walking away from it, even though it was the right thing to do, like it just sort of felt like
an abandonment of something that was your responsibility.
I think it felt like failure more than it actually was failure.
Yeah.
And yeah, those are my things. I had something else to say about that, but maybe it'll occur to me in a minute.
I'm sure it'll come back up again.
Yeah.
Let's see. Krista, I know you hate it when I call on you for anything, so let's just get over that now, okay? Do you have one that you're ready to share?
Well, I have many. I think, the one that is coming to mind now is kind of a over an exclusive focus on technical skill.
Okay.
Like, I always really want to improve my technical skill, and I always have this feeling like, okay, if I could just get to a higher level, then I will feel confident and competent. And so, like, getting out of school after college and things like that, and going into the world, I felt like that was the thing that I had to do, and is just improve this technical skill, which of course is always the case. But I think forever in my life, I've kind of fixated on that as a thing that is easy to control, that I can just, pour my whole self into and feel
progress
like
measurable.
Yeah, exactly. And feel like I am expending effort and somehow gaining
Yielding
worth
a return.
through that. Yeah, exactly. And so that was like kind of my easy dragon to slay. And then going out after college and realizing, oh, there are no more assignments. There's no more grading.
Grades.
Yeah, there's no more professors. It's only the real world. And so I realized that I had just had this absolute lack of, like, being a person. And like, so much of what we do, like when we're working together, is just interacting with other people, and you have to like be a person that people want to be around. And I was just like an absence. And I think part of that failure kind of, the world will tackle that for you, because as you go out into the world and you try and build these technical skills, you need to rely upon teachers. You need to go out to places where this learning takes place, and you bump into things and you bump into people, and then you find out what you are. And so kind of, I guess, school of life has taught that one.
That is interesting. I try to teach that to my employees too. The idea that like we're good at our job already. Like, maybe we're not the best, but we're good at our jobs. The reason that we work well with people is because they like us. And so like you need to actually make friends with the people. You need to know how to engage interpersonally, because that is what's going to get you the grace for when you inevitably mess up, and we continue that relationship because they like you. And it's so easy to focus on these technical skills. Did I do this right? Did I check these boxes? That it can be a bit of a failing to not really consider your character and the way that you interact with other people as one of the main assets that you have as a creative. And
I think that even like it can be, hitting those technical boxes can be a way of hiding from from that kind of personhood element as well.
Wow. True. I think sometimes I lean too far to the other side. I've got a lot of personhood, and maybe I'm not checking too many other boxes.
No, that's wonderful. We love your personhood.
Thank you. Jared, you have one to start? I know you got a couple.
Yeah. Let me see if I can do two and not like take the whole podcast.
Okay.
So my creative life here at Orange Nebula, my creative career has been full of very edifying and productive and improving experiences, but I don't really feel like I have experienced a real like gut punching failure yet. And so I want to share a couple of experiences from my own artistic career, artistic journey as an actor. And so I'll start with a high school theater audition for a straight play, and there were only like 5 or 6 characters, and I really wanted to be the main guy and have my current girlfriend be the girl, and I wanted to do the whole thing.
Look at that vision. That'd be
wonderful. We're at the audition, and I am down to the last couple of guys for that role, and I'm like, the possibility's real. It could be me. It could be me. And then just as a random try, the director says, "Hey, Jared, could you like do the scene again, but this time could you like do the butler character? I know you didn't prepare it, but I just want to see how it goes." And the way that I did it, like all the people who were in the audience, not the audience, all the other people auditioning, they all, were like, were impacted by the way that I did the butler and thought that it was both funny and, heartfelt and touching. And so I ended up like becoming the butler. But in the short term, immediately after finding out, I felt like the other character had died. Like a real person who I'd created in my mind, in my heart, and my soul had died, and I had to say goodbye to them. I literally like
Agreed.
went
I hate
to
when
the
that
costume
happens.
room and was like, goodbye. I like said a thing to this character that I had imagined
You did? I
myself
love
being.
that.
I did, yeah. But what I learned from that is that, even though I did not succeed in the exact frame that I imagined, I still was able to grow and learn and have an edifying experience as in that smaller role. And I was able to find many different opportunities to really stand out and do a fun or do a funny thing.
What's impressive to me about that situation is just how quickly you were able to recognize and grieve that loss, because sometimes when we don't do that right away, that's when resentment and negativity builds inside of us, and then the grieving process and the letting go of that dream process can take a lot more time, energy, and effort because of how much roots have grown in you of that negativity. So the fact you were able to just kind of go in the dressing room and address
It was the next
that-
day. I had
Okay.
a solid 24 hours.
Okay.
Being real bummed.
Yes.
Betraying yourself into butlerhood.
Well, I got to play a young butler and an old butler in that play, so it was really fun. I got to be like young, chipper, and spry, and just like frustrated. But then, the older, the older guy was much funnier. I
The
liked him a lot.
wizened butler,
Yeah.
all jaded.
Yeah.
Well, I love that. I really am impressed by the grieving process, because that's so important. Anytime that most of our failures have to have that grieving process, or else, it turns dark and ugly inside us.
Now the other failure has to do with like knowing what you need and shooting yourself in the foot and making things harder for yourself for no reason. And in the acting world, it's expected that you should have a book of songs and a few monologues that are just like in your pocket to whip out whenever. And I normally only have a book of songs, and if a audition requires a monologue, I will learn and prepare a monologue in the time in between me finding out about the audition and the audition happening.
Okay,
And obviously that makes it so that each individual monologue that I'm doing that's different every time is not as good as it could be if I was working on them throughout the year, and then whenever an audition came, I had a monologue that was
Right.
prepared. And so I went and I did this big singing audition in front of 70 different theaters and casting directors, and then an agency here in Portland contacted me and was like, "Hey, we saw you sing, and we really liked your acting and stuff. We want you to come do a monologue for us and audition to maybe have us represent you for like TV and film and other on-camera stuff." And so I did my normal thing of looking for a monologue, procrastinating, not getting the monologue exactly perfect to where it could be, and having to show a lesser version of myself to them, and have them tell me basically in no uncertain terms that I was not at the point where they felt comfortable representing me, and that. But they knew that I had the potential, and so if I went off and worked, I could potentially come back and audition. And so what I learned from that is that when there is something big that you are looking for on the horizon, you need to be actively preparing for it. And so I had this kind of whispering thought idea after talking to Mark at one point, several months before starting to work here, many months, where I was like, whoa, maybe a job at Orange Nebula could be like a thing that I could do. And at that moment, I started working on the Dungeons and Dragons expansion that I have been thinking about for close to a decade, and spent those months, all my free time, building it and filling it out. And then when it finally came time for the eventual interview, we didn't even look at my resume, and we just spent the whole interview talking about the expansion that I made. And and so basically what I have learned is that just like in D&D, when you fail, you want to fail forward. That when there is a moment where you have not reached what it is what you wanted, that you refocus, you reassess what needs to be done, you strategize, and then you implement.
It reminds me of in the Lottery Lie episode where you're talking about how you stand in a room and there's doors all over, and those doors are like opportunities that you need to be ready and prepared to walk through those doors. And if you don't actually take the time to get yourself prepared, then you don't have the confidence and the aptitude to walk through the doors of many opportunities.
Did you have something to share, a failure, or do we want to skip you?
Yeah, I have a couple.
What do you got?
One that is just kind of my main consistent failure is just taking care of myself well. I'm highly extroverted, and so I really love spending time around other people. It's important for my work to be able to collaborate with other people. However, if I don't get hours of alone time where no one else is around or will see me at all, then I kind of crack. The problem with that is that usually is only accomplished after everyone is asleep somewhere, so after all my children are asleep, after everything's done, then I'm spending multiple hours by myself editing videos, playing on my phone, laying in my hammock, and it usually leaves me up until 2 in the morning. And then my anxiety disorder is even worse because I get up in the morning and my cortisol is high because I'm exhausted. And so this is kind of a constant failure loop for me that I have not found a solution to. And I'm just in a state of failure most of the time in that sense.
So that is actually sets up something I've been thinking of really well. So as we've been sitting here talking, I've been trying to figure out like what's something to talk about other than like the value of failure. And look at us, we can learn things by failing, and failing is healthy and good and helpful and whatever. Like, I think everyone knows that to some degree, and certainly we all know that and have talked about that many times.
Yeah.
But you're describing this failure loop, and I described my own experience of starting but not finishing things consistently, and so that's sort of a loop for me. And I think everyone sort of agreed with that one, so no one shared that as their same thing, but that's probably a kind of a universal thing.
Yeah.
And it's occurring to me that when that happens, when I fail at something that I've failed at before, and there's a potential lesson to be learned, but that I already know,
Yes.
like...
So, yes, exactly.
Like, instead of learning the lesson, I get frustrated with myself.
Angry.
Yeah, I get frustrated, disappointed, mad, like I just feel stupid. Like, I have a different reaction all the time depending on where I'm at emotionally, psychologically, whatever. But, if I already know the lesson, like, that's not a productive failure for me usually. And so I think what I'm finding lately is that when those fails happen, to allow myself the ability to learn a lesson again as if for the first time, and like have that be something that I'm mentally conscious of, like there's a lesson to be learned here, learn it as if for the first time. Like, it's okay that I'm learning again that I need to follow through on projects and blah blah, whatever the lesson is. And instead of just getting frustrated with myself, really just reapproaching the lesson, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think sometimes it takes that. Like, you are coming back to the same thing again and again because it hasn't been worked out. Like, it keeps reappearing. And so it takes that, like, returning to that cycle, and maybe you learn it a little more and a little deeper each time.
My counselor tells me to be easy on myself for those things, that being hard on myself about these kind of consistent failures over and over again is not going to make it change. And maybe the more I can learn to accept this failure, the less control and power it will have over me. I'm not sure. I haven't experienced that yet because I still feel like a daily failure in that space. But it's just such a conundrum because I also feel like I need that space to succeed. So it's a paradox. I don't know. There's no way out right now. So if I just try to be easy on myself and not punish myself for the failure, I don't know, over time, maybe it'll lessen. But maybe it won't. Maybe I'll be like this forever.
Well, I think also, you're in a phase of life, and like you are and I am in the same phase of life where it's like you have little kids. Like, there's only so much you can control your time. And this just sort of like, the situation will not be ideal for this part of our life that we're talking about. Like, the situation for creating isn't going to like perfectly allow us to control our schedule to like maximize an efficiency eyes, like self-help book, whatever, like this is the perfect window for me to be creative. It's like, well,
Yes.
too bad. That's when the kids are doing kid stuff.
Yeah.
And and just like you said, giving ourselves grace in the season and like slowly absorbing lessons for the future but then doing the best that we can right now, and know that, like, you know, not every lesson has to apply to forever. You know, the lesson can apply differently at different times.
Yeah.
But I think giving yourself grace is something that's encapsulated in just about all lessons.
The only other one that I felt like sharing today, I fail in most partnership attempts. Maybe it means I have control issues, maybe, but anytime that I've attempted partnerships, you said these have to be creative, so we'll leave out all my exes. But like from a business perspective, the only time that I've brought in a partner, that failed pretty badly. You know, bringing in a business partner who there isn't, the power dynamics aren't clear, and the responsibilities aren't super clear, and the money situation isn't super clear. And the reason I brought in a business partner was because of what I perceived as my own lack of skills, and brought somebody in who I thought could fix that, you know. And what ended up happening was a lot of judgment coming from them, and me choosing to, like, okay, well, I've obviously been doing this wrong, and so I need to listen to this person who's going to fix things for me. Which, you know, this situation, there was one moment where I remember kind of taking my power back when this woman who was kind of running the operations of my business was said to me, you know, I just don't see you doing a lot that's successful right now. I see you running around doing these lacy things, but it's not actually turning into revenue for us. And in that moment when somebody looked at me and said, I see you doing these, something inside me just kind of shifted.
Your fire was lit.
And I'm like, you know, me running around doing my lacy things is why all of us are here right now. And so I'm going to be doing those things, and we'll figure out how that works into everything else later.
Hell yeah.
That is fascinating.
And from then we ended up having to go to business counseling, which is a thing if you didn't know.
It's just a boxing ring. Business counseling.
Yes. And, you know, I ended up ending that partnership, and basically anyone who I've become legally involved with, I've had to pay to leave me alone. So that's a lesson for me. But that was a bit of a failure. There were things that I gleaned from that relationship, and this woman helped build up my operations for my business and helped bring in our first real employees for the business. But I won't ever again be in a situation where there isn't clarity around control of decision making, and I won't partner with anybody who feels like they need to fix something for me.
I find that to be really fascinating.
Pushing it.
Is there something else you need to buy? Are you setting alarms for another thing you need to
No,
buy?
it's a different thing I need to do. Thank you. I have many alarms.
I find that to be really fascinating too, in like almost like this, having this external person, like, you know, you brought her on for these internal perceived lacks, but then
Yes.
having that external person there telling you that, like, almost you were able to have the resolve to, when it's an external person, to say, no, this is what I value. This is what I am.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
Just
such
like
a good
the
point.
horrible things that other people say to us, we can like measure that against reality so long as we're in a good space.
Yes.
But the stuff that we tell ourselves is so much harder to counter because we're the ones saying it.
Yes.
It's not like, oh, well, that person's wrong. Why are they wrong? It's like, well, I think this about me. This is a truth about me. This is a fact about me. Like,
Good point.
wow.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing your failures all together.
We're
here
very
today.
good at that.
We are. I knew this would be a good, easy episode for us to be able to just dump our failures on each other. But I'm impressed so much by all of you, and I love the opportunities that we have to
And
be
us
able
by
to
you.
sit here. And thank you, and be open this way and share what we've learned and how we failed. So thank you for showing up for us today.
Thank you.
If you're interested in feeding us some ideas because you think that our ideas suck, you can go to orangenebula.com/topics and we'll tell you to leave us alone, but maybe then we'll actually take our ideas and have them on the podcast. I don't know. Anything else? Y'all have anything else? You happy?
I'm very happy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Then thank you for spending some time with us, and we will talk to you soon. Bye.